So avoiding bad data behind customer onboarding slowdowns or killing you. So a lot of times it kills deals too. It's not just slowing down. But we're going to kind of unpack this, um, a little bit here. Ironically, I was on a phone call yesterday with a group, and he was joking with me. He's like, "You ever know when you're onboarding somebody and they send you those emails with like seven things in the email, and then they respond, but they only include two of them, and the data is not right." Like, I started laughing. I said, "That's the quintessential using email for onboarding scenario, right?" Now that's a little bit of blend of bad data and just horrible management. And he would be joking if he was on the call here today about that. So we're going to kind of cover a little bit more also of the environment needed to avoid bad data, because it's not just, you can't just swing your hand in the air and say no bad data and it does it, because we would have done it. So the proof is in the performance, as many of you know. I'm very adamant about the importance of onboarding for a lot of reasons. One, I'm a leader in a company that provides obviously an onboarding solution, but I've seen it firsthand, and I've seen it firsthand times a couple of 100,000 times of when onboarding goes sideways, especially in uh, bigger deals or more complex deals. It dramatically affects revenue. And I always say this on it: the onboarding has never been like the cool kids gang, right? Like, let's just be honest. There's sales, and everybody's wrapped up about that. There's sales ops. I like to talk about onboarding ops because it's that important, because it affects the bottom line of the organization substantially. And as a group, we need to be talking about that more uh, in those meetings. In your company's meetings, obviously, of the importance of your team and the importance of getting it right and doing things successfully there. So I'm always adamant about that, and I'm actually going to share a little bit more math and something that you can do real quickly to help you solidify that, whether you're just trying to explain it to your own team members, obviously, or obviously into a bigger business case that you might be working against, but an underlying problem, right? So there's the Johari. Everybody knows Johari windows, like, a lot of the times a failure point in these that are on the screen here is that there's bad data, and that bad data can come in a whole lot of formats. um, no pun intended. It could be also in file types, but the point being, it's a seismic risk to the velocity, or the TTV, time to value, of the process. So it's one of those, and I'll kind of explain where it pops up, and you'll probably resonate because it's probably happened to your teams. So let's jump in. So the stakes. So as you guys know, I'm always trying to frame things kind of from a business perspective, and then also kind of the solution side of it. So right now, onboarding for most corporations is a very expensive endeavor. Obviously, if you're self onboarding, it can be a lower cost, but you're doing it at a higher volume, right? But typically, many of you, there isn't a company out there now that isn't experiencing longer sales cycles, all these things. So there's been a lot of resources already thrown at this. Now it's getting into the handoffs and then getting into the actual onboarding, right? So your customer acquisition cost, CAC, frequently referred to as CAC, right, is blowing up. A lot of organizations, it's getting higher and higher. So onboarding becomes a very risky endeavor, because it's been so far down into the process. And then ultimately, what we see a lot of clients is bad data starts to create a lot of problems, and could be substantial. Whether they're caught or not, too, is also extremely dangerous. Meaning, it's bad data. Sometimes you're lucky you catch it. Sometimes you don't, and it's too late. Like, it gets out. Yeah, there's just a lot of, I don't know, a lot of bad things. But ultimately, they're kind of within it, different ways it can bite you in the butt, right? And so it's already a huge endeavor, huge expense for your firm. Now we're getting knee deep into it. And then, of course, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. I think everybody in this business of onboarding knows that. Hopefully your handoffs were good. If you're struggling with handoffs, on our website, we help a lot of firms with handoffs also, because that's bridging relationships and all sorts of stuff. I'm not going to cover that today, but that's equally as risky. And then getting into okay, now we got to work together and get data to get you going, whether this is a service project or a technology deployment. I mean, you name it. there's always data or information going back and forth. And so this is where the stakes get high from a risk perspective. So I don't know why my clicker isn't working today, but we're going to go with, sorry. So then we get into garbage in, garbage out, which I will refer to as GIGO moving forward. Rip off and duplicate, steal that, because that's really how we look at it. Is we always call it GIGO. And so this is where during the onboarding process, obviously you're going to be starting to collect. So I'm framing here a little bit for everybody here. So as we get into the actual details, we're on the a nomenclature and level set. So poor inputs, broken outcomes. I think everybody knows that. Data gaps, obviously all sorts of frustrations getting going. This is especially, and I'll unpack this more later on, if you're deploying a technical product and you're having to ask the client, the new client of yours, to provide you information, and one, you ask for the wrong things, or two, you don't give them good guidance as to why and the setup around it, or even templates, and they send you data and it's wrong and you have to keep going back to them, you'll burn out teams very, very quickly. If anybody here is doing that in healthcare, like healthcare, they'll stop the project because they're just going to get that mad and they don't have that much time to allocate. Literally, like seen it. And clean onboarding data obviously is all about faster time to value, faster satisfaction, etc. Right? So always be, watching out for the GIGO. This is really where you can get sideways extremely quickly. Challenges obviously related to this. I'm starting to elude these now. We're getting into them. A rough start, you've probably experienced that. Unclear expectations. Obviously, you're burning resources, communication overload, your timelines are getting whacked. You got all sorts of issues with, everything going on. And the ship is already starting to go a little bit sideways, right? And we're going to unpack a little bit of how on the front lines this needs to be attacked more, and I'll unpack those ideas that you literally could use tomorrow if you were unpacking a new or onboarding a new client tomorrow. So it's not only the process, now your team's starting to get pissed, right? So either you're getting pissed, your team is getting pissed, and these all, so it's a double whammy. The client is going sideways, and then your team is like, what is going on here, right? So you got a two-sided equation going on here of breaking down, right? So you got team impact and you got client impact, which is that you never want that double whammy, right? Because you know what happens with the double whammy. The double whammy kicks in the domino effect. And so it doesn't take long for this to kick in either. I think some of you are OGs, like myself, that it's not your first rodeo. You've done a lot of onboardings, a lot of stuff. I equate it to like a football game, right? Like everybody comes out, we're gonna win, and then there's two fumbles, and the stadium, like half the people are back in the parking lot having a beer, right? Like, so it's very, very, it's pretty funny. I mean, come on, it's Tuesday, isn't it? Yeah. So the point is it can get derailed pretty quickly, and that's not only on your team side, but then of course on the customer side. And to fix the heart and minds of both sides of the equation is a big investment. You might be able to change your team spirit, but a lot of times the customer, you won't, and that's going to equate to lost revenue. So it's extremely temperamental, right? And you got to stop it before it starts. And if it starts, you better see that it's happening to stop it as fast as you can, because if not, it can really get you. So from a money perspective, how does this affect your team? And again, these are some of these I would use with your team internally, because a lot of the stuff we like to talk about on these presentations, there's obviously we have a world-class platform for onboarding, but also you have a world-class team of your own people. And a lot of times it's just about coaching and development and helping them to grow and understand the why behind some things. So a lot of the things I share are, technical ideas that you can do, but also ways to communicate and collaborate with your own team to make them, why is this so important? Why is it what we do every day is mission critical? It doesn't seem like we're talking about an Excel spreadsheet coming back. Is that really the tipping point for our new client? Yeah, it actually can be. And so really being able to talk about, if this goes well, what positivity can be, and obviously to the group and the company overall, and then also any negative ideas that might come out of that. So I frequently share these from that perspective, not telling you how to lead or manage, but just nuggets of knowledge, obviously, you know, to obviously be successful. So there's the financial side of the impact. All right. So typically what we've seen, it's not just one thing you can do, even though I am gonna kind of give you like a pro tip of how to, do it where it will, if you're having problems with this, could dramatically change the percentage of that problem pretty quickly. It's just an insider thing that we do. But ultimately, we have found other related pieces of the recipe for success, of course, is having everything centralized, right? Effective communication. I'm not going to get into a sales pitch for our platform, but there's also just other things that I think you're aware. You need to be managing the client in a good way also, and making sure that everything is centralized, efficient, easy for them to understand, just all the things that are expected today, obviously, in a B2B onboarding environment. And especially if any of you on the call today are a more premium offering or anything north of 20 grand, in services, or you're working with 5 to 10 people on the onboarding side, it's just expected today to really have an efficient way of doing that. Today, we're kind of looking at a micro level of it, which is actually the data side, efficient file sharing and data collection, and automated data validation, obviously. But basically, how do you tee the customer up for success during this process? So we've seen, obviously, lots of these things. Of course, our platform has a lot of these, as many of you know, that's what we do. But just in general, so let's unpack it. So ROI. So now you're like, okay, I don't want to have this as a problem. That's all the negative. But let's talk about, if you're able to figure this out, which we're about to unlock, what can it actually do for our group? Again, improve time to value. If I've talked to you on this call, everybody uses TTV, but everybody kind of doesn't understand really how can we improve it, right? Because it seems like a wishy-washy and inconsistent based on the customer type and stuff. Well, there's ways you can attack that. The second piece is, plus, this is just an example, and I want to be very transparent here. So if you keep, if you're losing clients because of the onboarding, or you're having very frustrated customers on the onboarding, I have 5% retention here. Okay. It doesn't have to be 5% retention. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever you want to do, can change your profit of your organization by 25 to 95%. And you're like, Joe, that's a pretty big swing. So here's the fun thing, and I'll send it to you in the follow up. But you can compute all of this for your company in about 6 seconds on ChatGPT. There's a lot of variables that I'll tell you to put in, but it includes price, numbers, retention, obviously conversion, average contract value. There's a lot of different variables you can put into it, but it will show you. And it's pretty freaking substantial. So the devil is always in the details here. And why I bring these things up, again, it's the sentiment of how important onboarding is to the revenue side of the business. This is not a dotted line. This is the direct line, which is like financial terminology of importance, right? And so it's huge. Like, it is a huge impact. I'll give you that query. So in 6 seconds, you can do it. And then your team, you can say, hey, look, this is what we're talking about. By moving a 0.5%, 0.5% can equate to pretty substantial differences in profit. And then if you are a software company or somebody where this is reoccurring, or the project is multi-year, you're talking about the lifetime value, LTV, of that client can be substantially more to your organization, because if they leave, you don't have them for the 3 years that you normally would, right? And that's very, very important. Again, I always look at onboarding from the business perspective, because it is very mission critical to the valuation of the company, your clients, how much revenue comes in. Yeah. Um, and then obviously these other items are equally as important: lower costs, it's not taking longer, all those kinds of things. But I really like to focus on the top two, because the two are mathematically real. The other ones also are, but the other ones you can actually calculate on your own on every single project all the time, which is what everybody here wants, right? Visibility, accountability, and capabilities of understanding what's going on to make effective real-time decisions, right? So that's why I focus on these, because they're literally tools that you can deploy today with your team later tonight, and really be able to start to measure accordingly there. One of our other products, we deployed a couple of things, and our profit increased about 33% there. It was about a $5,000 a year tool set. It's not Engage, but a different tool set, and right around average contract value around that. And yeah, about 33% differentiation in the end game. Pretty substantial. Okay, so let's get into it. Pro tip: Mars rack. Yes, I understand. That's not cool. Like, I get it. It's kind of a joke to a lot of people within my group. I'm a big outer space kind of fan, those kinds of things. But so Mars rack should be the Mars rover. It's not, but the Mars rover pretty awesome. Um, like yeah, I don't want to get off track. We're getting the Mars rover is the size of a Chevy Tahoe, just to give everybody kind of like super clear understanding of like how awesome that is. So like literally, like it's bonkers. Back to the point here. Mars rack. So Mars rack is literally what's on the screen, and you're like, okay, Joe, that mutual, assign, remind, submit, review, accept, configure. Okay, makes sense. Mars rack. Okay, so let's get into it. What the hell does Mars rack have to do with this conversation today? Well, let's get into it. So here it is. So most people I talk to when they're doing onboarding, obviously they're wanting to have some sort of mutual plan or process for their onboarding, right? This, of course, is our tool, but I'm not demoing. I just want to make you understand kind of the point of this Mars rack. So, so Gigo, garbage in, garbage out. Some of the largest threats to Gigo are a couple of things. One, the person not submitting the information you have asked them for, right? So you have asked them for something and they haven't given it to you. In this case, we're going to focus on this integration needs and alignment. This is just a very, very simple use case just to elaborate what my points are here. Okay. So first is you got to make an ask, and you need to be aligned to do that. That's why we use concepts like this mutual plan concept to do that, right? So in this case, we're asking Barry for information. Okay. So that's what the mutual is, right? So the mutual is we have agreed upon during our onboarding that you're going to provide me, Barry, some information. Rando assignment without them verbally committing to it, you get lower completion rates. So we typically try to recommend that if you, especially on certain items that you know you're having problems on, these are talked about in a mutual format way and mutually accountable, and saying, hey, Barry, we need this stuff from you, da 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 da, right? So it's mutual, and then it's assigned to Barry. So this is the mutual assign, right? Sorry, someone's coming in. And then we're going to get into remind. So like anything in life, just agreeing to it, and then, obviously not being reminded about it as it's getting closer. That's a huge critical piece. And I'll show you that here in our tool set. It's obviously has all the reminders, has escalation policies, all sorts of things. So you got mutual, assign, remind. Then Barry, let's say Barry goes in. So Barry now comes in, and Barry's going to look at this item. And let's just, I'm again keeping it very, very simple, but this I think resonates with everybody. There's a purpose for him, and so he understands what it is. And then, of course, he can upload configuration files, add a URL for stuff. Our system collects any kind of data types, all sorts of stuff inside these items. Why is that important? You're about to find out. One, we can validate a lot of the data types, file types, all sorts of stuff like that for you. Obviously, submit templates or provide templates so the client can download those templates, etc. But let's just say it's mutual, assign, remind, and then submitted. Let's just say Barry actually comes in here and he uploads the files you want and the URL you want, right? Well, the next step in this submitted process is review. So this is the other big breakdown point for clients in bad data. Is one, they weren't able to validate it as much if you were using a system. The second piece is they submit you junk, and the junk might not be on purpose. It might be mismatched. So what happens is there's sometimes effort to get them to send the stuff, and then the client sends it all back, but no one looks at it. And so now you got a whole bunch of data that's been sent back your way and your team hasn't looked at it yet. And here's unfortunately what happens is they don't, and they wait until later on in the process. And then everybody's opening up Excel files, documents, whatever it is, financial information, whatever it might be, and the data isn't correct. And so they have to then re engage with the client to do that and get new versions of the information. What has happened here is a complete blow up. One, the client thinks they're in good standing because they got everything to you in time. Two, you now have burned who knows how many days in your time to value chain because it's just been dragging on, right? Big problem. And then all of a sudden, at the last minute, you're looking at it, something wrong with it, and now you're re-asking the client to upload additional information or this is wrong. This is where all that frustration and the domino effect comes because it's too late in the game. The customer has moved on. Maybe those resources were from engineering or certain folks that aren't available now, and you have pretty sizable blowups. And this blow up can obviously be multiplied pretty a lot obviously if there's many different data types that are coming back and forth and configuration data. Now your setup team can't do stuff, everything is now delayed, so really problematic. So one of the processes I recommend everybody does, um, and obviously our tool does it, but is when it gets submitted, let's say Barry did upload this, it basically creates conditional secondary internal tasks for the people to review it. So everything that is collected needs to be reviewed first and then actually approved. So in real time, as things are coming in, we're staying up to date as to what's going on. So the client can submit anything, obviously, through the workspaces, but then we are dynamically creating sub items to basically take these things, break it apart, and confirm that they are correct so that you're catching those in real time. Basically, the ultimate CYA. And how that works is, and we're not going to go through it here today, but how that works is when, in our tool at least, when client submits the data then carries down automatically to these sub items and moves down throughout the entire project. So everything is centralized for all the players involved. Because on your side, you might have IT involved, compliance involved, they have IT and compliance. Basically, keeping the daisy chain of information all together, even though you're reviewing it. So again, it's mutual. You assign it, you remind, they submit, you then need to review, accept, and then these could be kicked off into the actual real configuration activities downstream. I hope that makes pretty good sense because it's not rocket science. I am not saying it is by any way, shape, or form. Does it solve a tremendous amount of problems during onboarding? Yes, it does, because you're catching it fast. It's the old trust but verify, right? There's thousands of names I could give this, but this little process works extremely well where you're assigning out to the Barry, you're reminding the hell out of him to make sure he doesn't miss his deadlines through automations, right? All these automations, reminders, follow-ups. Basically, you're doing nothing. The tool is guiding you to success. Then Barry does something. Then that's going to trigger your additional subtask items for your team. In this case, me and Megan are now going to go look at these. I can see the data. I can approve it. And then Barry gets alerted that it's been approved, right? Or any kind of custom status you want. It can be anything. But I bring this up because Mars Rack is like a super simple concept that you can deploy immediately and it will protect your butt very substantially. So really important. We collect a ton of data for our clients. This is for any kind of data file, video, anything you're doing. But this simple process, which again is just one small step maybe in your mutual plan with your client for configuration or other services you're providing, whatever it is, accounting groups, software groups, services groups. I mean, we work with all kinds of clients, and this has proven to be a huge benefit to them because it's just bird dogging everything to keep it on time, make sure things are correct. And then that data is in a good spot that it can be used for all the downstream people that need it, right? Configuration or proposaling. This is used a lot, obviously, in the sales process, also, not just onboarding. So I encourage you. to really think about. And maybe you don't want to do that on every single step. I get it, but it is a pretty important um, concept just to weave into everything you're doing there, because it will keep things on schedule. It will keep things on time, and you're going to find problems fast. I think we all are reasonable people. I hope. And things are going to happen. The client might misunderstand this or something like that. It's coming. So just create a safety net around the process to identify. And if you identify it fast, I always joke, I, I like space. I also like boats, right? Nautical. And it's not a big deal if you're 1 degree off on the compass bubble if you figure it out fast. If you wait a day and a half, you might not hit land. Big problem, right? Or refuel or whatever. So it's not about not having problems. It's about finding them fast and resolving them fast. And that's really kind of the spirit. And of course, we're preventing a lot, but you know what I'm getting at. I mean, that's just the art and science of relationships and managing that back and forth. Hope that makes sense. If you agree, disagree, of course, this could have about 20 items here because then it could go down more. Put a comment in it. Love to dialogue about it. If you have a better name for Mars Rack than Mars Rack, please tell me. But I don't have it branded, or not branded, trademarked. But the point is if you have a flavor of this that you prefer, don't tell me. Give me a comment and I'll sync with you on it. But I do coach. If you have a phone, take a picture of it. You can immediately move it with your team today, obviously, and yeah, make a real impact. Um, the other concept, pro tip, is pre-mortem. So some of you, if you've been on previous calls, this is kind of the softer science of this stuff. Um, so let me kind of frame this a little bit. It's pre-mortem, not post-mortem. So that's why this is important with data. So typically this is deployed in the kickoff meeting. And in this case, we would highlight obviously more data needs. And so when you're working with your new customer, again, most of the time they don't know what they don't know. So right, so they don't know what they don't know. It's obvious. Um, and so your team knows everything. The client knows nothing. They're just trying to figure out, what do you guys do, or what's this service? What do just they're just trying to get ramped up because you sold it more than likely to different people, and now you're working with the implementation team. So they don't know what's coming, and they don't know what the needs are. And so typically, again, pre-mortem specifically to data, because we suggest, and there's resources on our site of pre-mortems for a lot of other things. But when you're talking about a pre-mortem specific to data, um, we, you're framing it with the client. Okay, so this is all the data needs we're going to have, and this is in your kickoff call, because, or maybe your second call if those right people aren't there. You know where to fit this in. But basically, the point being here is, if the data needs don't happen till later in your onboarding process, or whatever, in phase 2 or whatever, I like to we coach and recommend to pull that forward into the early stage and start talking about, okay, these are the data sets we're going to need, because so many of your clients are fragmented, siloed groups, that data, you're not going to get all that data from Tim. It's going to be Tim, Tammy, and Tiffany. And so the 3 T's, you got to get them all working with you earlier in the process and validating that they actually can even get this data in many cases. Or, I'll be honest, or the client is going to be like, no, I can't even get you that information. We don't have access to that. And I don't even know who could get us access to that. Red dot, that could affect the onboarding, that could affect your TTV. That's great. You're talking about it. That's what you want to do. You want to find the problem before it's a problem. So the earlier pro tip was obviously technical and how to manage and operate it through. This is the softer side of injecting data conversations literally at the beginning to make sure you can identify any red dot items or problem points, out there to uh, destroy you halfway through the cycle, right? Because then it's too late. Maybe the IT team isn't even available. Who knows? Everybody knows what I'm talking about here. There's a lot of stuff. Somebody just had a baby, someone's getting married, like any of those things. I mean, like it's crazy. You can blow a month or two waiting on some data. And I think, yeah. And if again, I'm not picking on healthcare, but healthcare deployments, like if you need IT involved a lot, it's very hard to go back to the well with those groups. It's the hardest group to get additional data and information on because they're overwhelmed already. Not that other groups aren't overwhelmed, but I think, yeah, if you've been in the game, you know. And so this is a really important piece to add to, and I'll share additional resources on this also. But it can really help you identify some challenging areas overall in the process. All right, making sense, everybody? Let me know. Comment if you're doing pre-mortems already, or some sort of um, you know um, flavor of that, right? Because it really works, and it gets the comfort, and it protects your team. So with that all said, I'm going to skip over a few things here because they're not really needed for this today's presentation. But here's what I do know is if you do the pre-mortem correctly and clean your data using like our process or any methodology similar to like that, we are very confident that you can start to establish pretty consistent TTVs. And also, we know for sure most of our clients, like without even trying, we get them to about 30% more operational efficiency on your side, um, because that's very important. Obviously, time on task on your side. And then what you saw also helps the clients substantially. And you say, Joe, well, why do you care about the clients? Well, here's the deal. During the sales process, everybody's familiar with the concept of a sales champion. That's the person who helps sell the deal. Well, in onboarding, you have the same thing. You have your peer on the other side of the organization, your onboarding champion. When you frame the data collection and the pre-mortems and all of this stuff correctly for your onboarding champion, it equips them to be more successful with their group internally, because you might need to break out the data collection across multiple people, the 3 T's like I was talking about, and also just making him or her successful on getting you the data and information the right way to get that across the line. Makes sense, team? So it's both sides. That's why I always go mutual on everything. It's a mutual plan. It's not just your team. The data has to come from them, but how do you equip your internal champ successfully there to capture that data? All right, that's it, team. So the two takeaways, I want you to, if you can, implement. I always try to keep this around 35 minutes. Actionable items, obviously, is the pre-mortem concept inside your ecosystem. Oops, sorry. And then Mars Rack, obviously, from just a data sequencing and process, it's a very simple concept for your team to understand and to embrace and to do. And so, again, appreciate it. Another successful webinar. I will be sharing out all of this stuff. And let me know in the comments if you're going to do this. I always love to hear that, because ultimately I'm just trying to share a lot of information that we see really helps transform, especially in data, um, data transformations, data collection, files, whatever it is, the processes that really equip you for success there. So again, Joey Connect, appreciate the time today, everybody. And we'll talk soon. I'll share it all out. Thanks.